After House of the Dragon, the Jon Snow sequel could finally answer a question about his ancestor Daemon Targaryen's Dark Sister sword. But we should warn you, if you haven't watched House of the Dragon or even read Fire and Blood, then you're in for a lot of spoilers. So in today's video, let's talk about how the upcoming series could solve a huge mystery and if we'd get to see Grey Worm return.
Do I have a champion?
Inte bacchiza rigle, misa esposa altrizes. Dobrogos livan o agresi.
First off, let's talk about what happens to Dark Sister after Daemon's HOTD death. While still under the possession of Prince Daemon Targaryen, Dark Sister will continue to be a big part of some iconic moments in House of the Dragon. So, we know that the Targaryen prince has already used the sword to kill the Crab Feeder and Vaemon Velaryon by cutting off their heads, but we don't think anything will be as shocking as how he uses the Valyrian steel sword for the last time. He dies during the battle above the God's Eye, which happens near the end of the Dance of the Dragons. And after avoiding each other for a while, he and his nephew Aemond One-Eye Targaryen finally meet over the lake at Harrenhal and fight with their dragons.
Go to your quarters. All of you go, now.
But just before the dragons crash into the water, Daemon jumps from Caraxes onto Vhagar while he thrusts Dark Sister into his nephew's blind eye, after which the dragons, with the men, drown in the lake. If you've read the book Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin, then you'd know that when Aemon's body is found, Dark Sister is still thrust hilt deep through his eye socket. The sword is passed on to the rogue prince's grandson, Aemon the Dragon Knight, who's also the son of King Viserys II Targaryen and Margaery Tyrell. But when he dies, his nephew Brynden Rivers is found to be worthy of the blade. Several decades later, Bloodraven goes missing with the Valyrian steel sword. Next up, Dark Sister's disappearance could link the Three-Eyed Raven and Aegon's dream. Don't you think that Jon Snow's fulfillment of Aegon's dream in Game of Thrones and the prophecy in HOTD could be perfectly linked together with the disappearance of Brynden Rivers in the North? In the Game of Thrones books, Bloodraven is thought to be the first Three-Eyed Raven.
All of you, all of your lives, with 1,000 eyes and one. Now you've come to me at last, Brandon Stark.
Because he was a Greenseer, passing his identity to Bran Stark. As a baseborn Targaryen, he is probably also a dragon dreamer, which could explain why he went missing beyond the Wall. There's a chance that he may have dreamed about the White Walkers and learned that the Children of the Forest made them, while also suggesting that he found out how they're connected to Aegon's Song of Ice and Fire prophecy. There have been discussions about how, since he disappeared while wandering beyond the Wall, the Targaryen sword could be near the tree where he lived as the Three-Eyed Raven. He probably knew that the White Walkers would attack soon, so he may have stayed in the north to protect the living and use magic to keep them away. We think that if he knew that the Valyrian steel could kill them, he might have brought the Dark Sister with him to help Aegon's prophecy come true. Now there's also the possibility that maybe he saw another danger in the north that needed the prince that was promised, aka Jon Snow, to use the steel and destroy it in the Game of Thrones sequel series. We can only wait to find out what happens next.
You shouldn't have to come to Winterfell with me. I shouldn't be asking you. It's not the deal we made. I need you with me if we're gonna beat them, and we need to beat them if you're gonna survive.
Lastly, let's talk about what Jon finding the sword would mean for his Targaryen heritage. Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, is the last living Targaryen, so it's only fair that he inherits all of the family's belongings, which of course includes Daemon's sword, Dark Sister.
He can keep his tongue.
Disarm him!
And since Brynden Rivers was probably a dragon dreamer, Jon finding Dark Sister would be another sign that he was meant to play a part in the House Targaryen prophecies. His role as the prince that was promised wasn't fully taken into account at the end of Game of Thrones, so his sequel series could go into more detail about how he continues to carry on the legacy of his house and Aegon the Conqueror's dream. Jon's right to be a prophet as a Targaryen would be strengthened by finding the Valyrian steel, and he would also have a stronger link to Daemon Targaryen and the original Three-Eyed Raven. Do you think he might find out that he also has the ability to dream of dragons and be led north to where Dark Sister is? We all know that House Targaryen's presence in Westeros has been marked by dragon dreams, so it'd make total sense for the last of their descendants to inherit this ability to find the rogue prince's lost Valyrian sword after the end of Game of Thrones. Now let's move on to what Jacob Anderson has to say about a possible return in the Jon Snow spin-off.
I'm not gonna swear an oath I can't uphold. Talk about my father if you want. Tell me that's the attitude that got him killed. But when enough people make false promises, words stop meaning anything.
Starting off, Grey Worm's relationship with Jon Snow. This summer, HBO announced a live-action spin-off project about Jon Snow. Kit Harington is set to play the title role once again. It's the first sequel to Game of Thrones in the works, along with many other live-action and animated prequels, such as 10,000 Ships, 9 Voyages, Drunken Egg, and The Golden Empire. Nearly 5 months after it was announced that there'd be a sequel to Game of Thrones, Grey Worm's actor has told us in a recent interview if we can expect to see him in the Jon Snow-focused show. Jacob Anderson didn't say for sure whether the character will come back or not, but he did say it would definitely surprise him a lot if it were to happen. But he's not going to be the only one taken aback by this. The actor backs up what he said by saying it'd be pretty exciting if he and Jon Snow were in the new spin-off, since he wouldn't want to see Jon Snow again. So the only reason he would show up on the show would be to kill him. He goes on to explain his views that the promised prince was still alive because the commander of the Unsullied told him he didn't want to see his face again. Before he left, he made sure that both of them went their separate ways and never crossed paths again. Some of us may have seen his words as negative, but they could actually be hiding something very important to the series. And it'd definitely be quite strange, yet exciting, if this character showed up again. Next up, let's talk about what this reunion would entail. There isn't much that we got out of Anderson's answer, but the idea that Grey Worm might come back in the untitled Jon Snow spin-off series makes sense. At the end of Game of Thrones, the commander and his Unsullied clan sail away from the Isle of Noth, and Snow probably becomes the leader of the wildlings north of the Wall. So we know that the leader of the Unsullied isn't happy that Jon killed Daenerys Targaryen, the woman who saved him from being a slave and gave him a new life.
The Repti.
She was the only person he genuinely cared about, so it was completely understandable why he couldn't stand the sight of him. And while he probably still hates the promised prince to no end, the only reason he lets him go is because King Bran Stark wants Jon to go to the Night's Watch. In the next Game of Thrones book, if he leaves Nath to get revenge on Jon, he will be breaking his deal with Bran and his promise to Missandei to defend her people. Finally, let's discuss what other Game of Thrones characters could appear in the spin-off. Jacob doesn't think it makes much sense for his character to show up in the sequel series, but we do think that there's a high chance some other Game of Thrones characters would return. It's also most likely these characters, unlike Grey, would be close to Jon. Key Stark siblings like Sansa, Arya, and King Bran could be among them. Tyrion Lannister, as well as Grand Maester Samwell Tarly, who was his best friend in the original HBO show, could also be in the series. For now, all these character comebacks are guesses from our side, since they depend on how the show is going. Unfortunately, none of them have revealed anything yet, and even HBO hasn't said much about the plot of the spin-off. So if it's just about the Warden of the North's journey in the land beyond the Wall, then none of these characters are going to be in it. But obviously the series would need some good enemies, and we need Grey back in this new series. This Unsullied antagonist might be as good at fighting as Snow, which could lead to a very thrilling and exciting battle between two. But right now, all of us will just have to sit back and see if he or any of our other favorites will return in the upcoming series. That's a wrap for this video. What do you think about Jon Snow's sequel lifting a weight off of our chests, and also how we could possibly expect a Jacob Anderson comeback in the series? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. We'll see you in the next one.